Thank you so much, Jen. Brad, thanks so much for joining me today. Pleased to virtually meet you.
Yeah, you as well. It's great to see you. Thanks for having me.
Good. Well, I couldn't ask for anybody better to join me for today's Hudson Valley deep dive. I am going to share our presentation with everyone. I'm going to dive right in. We've got 3 wines to taste today. And we hope to just kind of explore all the upward trends in quality winemaking in the Hudson Valley, and hopefully just get everybody excited to keep trying more, because there's a whole lot of diversity out there to be had. And so I think just with today's 3 wines, you're going to get just a tiny snapshot of the kind of breadth of different varieties and styles that are available to you. So yeah, let's go right into it. And today, just so everyone knows, we are focusing more on the Hudson River region than the Upper Hudson. The Upper Hudson will come at another session later this year. So just our New York statewide map here, just to give everybody a bit of a sense check. Hudson River region sitting directly above New York City. The Hudson Valley includes, again, the Hudson River AVA, which is south of the New York State capital of Albany. And then the Upper Hudson AVA, which is north and west of Albany. Today, we're focusing on the latter. The Hudson River region AVA is characterized by longstanding agricultural and viticultural history, the diverse alluvial soils and microclimates found throughout the corridor of plains and hills, and the resulting 315-mile long Hudson River. And so we'll take another look here. Approximately 125 miles from top to bottom. I did some Google mapping this morning, and you could drive it about 2 hours from the Mario Cuomo Bridge at the bottom there, all the way up to the top, right before you get into Albany proper. And then at its widest point, you get about 65 miles, give or take. And so it's a fairly big region, and given all of its really kind of diverse geological features that we'll discuss, you'll kind of expect to see huge kind of swings in terms of temperatures and variations on with your various site-specific vineyards. And so, yeah, here we're working with both Vitis vinifera grape varieties and hybrids. We've got about 80 farms and approximately 500 acres under vine. Still working with those 2011 numbers on the acreage. I expect there's a bit more these days. I think that there's been a lot of excitement in the region, and we are seeing growth, which is great. Average growing season, approximately 190 days. This is one of the oldest and most historically important wine areas in the U.S. The Hudson River Valley can be credited for pioneering many of the innovations that helped the New York wine industry grow. The Hudson River region was also the very first AVA in New York State, established on June 4th in 1982. Fantastic. Brad, anything you want to add before we get into, we got terroir coming up next, some geography, some climate. You ready to go?
Yeah, I think you covered the basics there.
All right, good.
Sure.
Great. Okay, so weird. Okay, so our Hudson River region terroir. Your topography with the river valley is facilitating the flow of ocean-influenced air. It's providing a degree of maritime influence, particularly in the lower part of the region, as you get towards Manhattan and the Atlantic Ocean. The climate of New York's Hudson Valley is generally representative of humid climates in the Northeast United States, hot summers, cold winters. While humidity and precipitation may be somewhat higher than the surrounding areas, it's a worthy trade-off for warmer nights and a less extreme annual temperature range compared to areas further from the lake and more landlocked. I'm sorry, the river. I'm so used to the lake business here. But yeah, further from the river, and once you're kind of in more continental areas, they really don't support viticulture the way that the Hudson River Valley does. The vineyard lands generally have coarse shale or slate fragments, finer particles of clay, and gravelly loams. It's a really kind of mosaic of soil types in the region. You've got mountains pretty much on three sides of the region. So you have the Palisades, that's metamorphic basalt. You've got the highlands, primarily granite and gneiss. And from Beacon to Albany, you've got shales and limestones. I mean, we're talking again, glacier carved region, like all of New York State, and that glaciation has made for very diverse alluvial soils. Your river is tidal, which is pretty cool. I did when I was writing the reference guide, I spent a lot of time just trying to understand, what this river is doing, and it's pretty cool. The river's tidal; it changes directions twice daily. That influence goes as far north as the Federal Dam in Troy, New York. That's north of Albany. And so, heading south from there, your river is maintaining a depth of at least 30 feet. It was dredged as a shipping route. So you always have at least that kind of 30-foot depth there, but some areas are significantly deeper. The deepest part of the Hudson reaches around 202 feet deep. It's near the U.S. Military Academy. And so, again, it is a driver of temperature moderation. And Brad, does that sit as fairly accurate for you? What do you think is the most important driver of terroir in the Hudson River region? Is it the soils? Is it the influence of the river? Is it the climate? I'm curious to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, no, it's in the name. It's the river. I mean, that's really what drives everything around here. I mean, it's the plantings you showed in the map before. The diversity of this region is larger than any other region in New York State for the most part. I mean, the closer you are to the river, of course, the more alluvial soils. So you're getting more of that type of gravelly loams, gravelly sandy loams. We do have some limestone in certain locations, especially down in the Marlborough, Newburgh area. A lot of great limestone, which tends to, of course, everyone knows of Champagne in those places. So it tends to really nice sparkling wine grapes grown there, which is where we have our sparkling wine vineyard as well. Then you have great drainage because of the river going into the river. So great airflow for that particular areas, as well as the moderating temperatures. And then the further inland you go, the more into the clay soils or different types of soils that you're running into, as well as the more extremes when it comes to temperatures in the winter time. So you don't get the moderating effect of the river. And we actually ran into it with our home vineyard. We're right up against the Shawangunk Mountains. So again, it's a glacier type of soils up to it, but the problem is it fits then into a bowl. So you get what happened with the frost recently is we call it a bathtub effect, where the cold air will go down and it'll flow, but then it'll work its way back up. And it worked its way back up on some of the hills. And so it caused much heavier frost damage than we experienced right along the river, where it doesn't pull back up. So the river is definitely the major impact for terroir in our area.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a nice little kind of segue into more of the climate kind of stuff. I grew up out on Long Island. I did 10 years in New York City. I've spent some time in the Hudson Valley, mostly as a tourist, and now on my wine adventures. I've done my fair share of leaf peeping and hiking in the Catskills, things like that. And I'll tell you, it's a beautiful place. Summers are pleasant. That diurnal range helps cool the midday heat in the evenings. On the flip side, you have pretty intense winters. They're sometimes severe. Precipitation is relatively well distributed throughout the year, with most falling during warmer months. Snowfall, very variable based on elevation. And the Hudson Valley actually enjoys a lot of sunshine as compared to other parts of the state. I think one of the things that we've kind of identified as a desirable characteristic, the rainfall patterns. Generally, it suggests that July rains are more plentiful than in the rest of the state, but reduced in September and October during the harvest season. And during that fruit maturing months, that's a really kind of key time to get it. Brad, does that kind of land within your experience? I know there's no such thing as a typical vintage, but do you guys, when's the stress at full peak?
basically, I don't know if the stress is never at full peak, but no, for sure, we get early rains, except for last year, which was very odd. Like the drought we had last year, it was hardly any rain the entire season, which that was very strange. And it's changed per year. Like then going back probably 10 years ago, if you remember 2011, 2012, we had late seasons because we're also, because of where we're situated, we can also get hit with the hurricanes that can come up. So like back in 2011 with the hurricanes that hit Long Island, that hit southern Jersey, we got the remnants of those. So we had extreme rainfall during September, October. So we got hit really heavily those years, which caused, those were really rough. So we can get late seasons, typically late season rain, similar to like Long Island. So we can get those residual hurricane effects or those storms, but we haven't had as many of those over the last few years. So yeah, it's kind of fit. It changes yearly for sure, but it's kind of fit what your description is over the last few years, at least.
All right. It's funny. I mean, these days you can look at empirical data over the last 3-4 decades, and it doesn't necessarily fit the bill anymore, just because things are so erratic. And climate change obviously comes up in these discussions quite a bit, but it's not just heat. It's everything. It's just it's more extreme weather patterns throughout. And so I'm curious if you would kind of take us through a harvest, a season, right? So start maybe in our winter, work our way through the harvest, and kind of tell us what you're looking out for in terms of pitfalls, and then from a viticultural perspective, how are we tackling them? So winter, I expect you've got 2 issues. You've got extreme low temps, right? And then you're going to have late kind of winter frosts.
Mm-hmm.
Fairly
sure.
Accurate.
No, it's right. Yeah. So wintertime, I mean, it kind of starts with the year previous. So, we're getting harvest done and then allowing things to harden up, as you could say, once the season is over with. So we ran into a problem, I think it was 2018, when we had such super late season rains. Like it was raining in November. We had warm temperatures and rain in November. So we went into the winter time and things never fully hardened off. So we ended up having some low temperatures, not extremely low temperatures that we would normally have during the years, but we had pretty low temperatures in January, February, which ended up almost wiping out the majority of our buds because nothing had fully hardened off. So it really kind of starts at the end of the season with getting that nice hardening of the vines so they can go to sleep basically over the winter. And then going into the winter, usually in January, February is when we have to watch out for the extreme low temperatures. The low temperatures, so we have a lot of vinifera. We have a mixture of vinifera and hybrids planted. I think in some of your other sessions, you talked about vinifera, usually looking for temperatures. Hopefully it's not going below about minus 10 degrees Fahrenheit on the winter. If we can stay above that, then we're usually okay. If it goes below that, then we can have some winter damage. And then on hybrids, it's usually down to about -16 or -20, depending on where it's planted and what's planted. So that's the first thing. Usually around February 15th or the 20th is usually where the okay time, or then we're like, okay, we're not going to get the extreme temperatures anymore. And how we cover that with viticulture is we do hilling up. So we hill up the vines, so we're covering the roots, the scions, and trying to protect from losing those vines. We might lose some of the buds for this year, but we're not going to lose the vine as a whole. So that's how we're doing that. And then up till then, from about February then till like mid-April. This year was a little bit earlier, where then we're trying to watch out for bud break. So that's when the vines are starting to pop their buds, and then we're crazy looking at the temperatures and the weather patterns, because then you want to make sure that we're not going to get frost, which of course we did this year. And usually it's about March or May 15th is kind of the time frame where we know, okay, if we can make it past May 15th, we're probably okay, or we're not going to be hit with frost. This year was March 8th or May 18th. So it was a little bit later because of the heat we had in April. We were about 2 weeks ahead of most of our vines. So we had a lot of shoot growth. And when the frost hit, it damaged a lot of vines. And again, we talked about it earlier, but it was vineyard specific, so site specific of how hard the frost hit us. And there's some things you can do. There's not a whole lot you can do when it comes to frost. We tried doing
especially
things
when
like
you're spread across what sounded like, I mean,
spread
you
all over
listed
the
up 8
place.
different
Yeah, we
vineyards,
have,
I think.
yeah, we have vineyards all over the place, and you're trying to do as much as you can. There's, we have wind machines to try to help out with keeping some of the air temperature down. We tried spraying a copper, which we found out that it helps protect the buds to a certain temperature, but it's very specific temperature. Like it can go down to like 29.5, but if it goes to 29.2, then you're toast. So so we try to do those things to try to protect ourselves, but ultimately you're just riding a wave. You're just, up all night. And I know we had some friends that would go out, they will go out with their sprayers, they hooked their sprayers up at the top of the hill and just had the fans just blowing pretty much for like 8 hours straight, just trying to blow air and keep air flowing through. So you're trying to do those things to try to cover up as much and cover our frost as much as possible. But once you make it past that point, then you're into, fruit set. And then we're going through, and so that's what we're going through now with fruit set, just to try to see what we're going to have.
Yeah. How often have you had like tough winter events, whether it be frost or really extreme? Is this something you get every single year? Is it getting better? I actually, this past winter was mild, right? We didn't really get the low temperatures. Now that ended up screwing us on the back end, but I'm trying to guess, I guess if every single winter was devastating, we wouldn't probably still be doing this, yet we've been doing it for a very, very, very long time. And so what's the, what's the over under on a really tough winter, I guess?
No, I guess we're probably having less extended bad winters. So like used to be -5, -10 for an extended period of time was consistent, and getting significant amounts of snow. And the heavy winters were more the norm. Now we don't have as many of those, but now what we're getting extreme spikes. So we'll be going through fine. Everything will be moderate temperatures. Like we're getting where it's not even in the negatives. We're staying moderate, like around 0 to 5 degrees. But then we'll have one night that we see coming, and it'll spike down to -10, -12. And it might just be for one night, might just be for a couple hours. Sometimes we do okay with it where we don't have any damage. Sometimes there might be some damage. So it's so we're actually, I would say it's getting a little bit easier when it comes to, not easier, but we're getting less of the sustained bad winters, but we're kind of on the edge more because we're getting some of those extreme spikes that we didn't get before.
That's a great summary. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we're working our way into spring and into summer. What are you guys doing in terms of vine training? I know you have a lot of different vineyards and also a lot of different kinds of fruit. And so are you guys, do you have one way that you like for all of it, or is it all very, very kind of site specific?
Yeah. So for us, we have everything trained the same way. So we have everything trained on vertical shoot positioning. So everything trellis VSP. So we're all doing it the same way. Different places, different vineyards have things done can have things very differently. Like some vineyards are, high wire plant, they're high wires positioned and different trellis systems and things, but everything for us is VSP. So we're basically, once the buds start popping, we're shoot positioning, we're going through, that's coming up soon. Where we'll start doing more of that. It's starting to get to the point where we have the growth, but with the frost, it also killed a lot of the primaries. So usually the primaries are what needs to be positioned now. And so we lost a lot of primaries. So now we're on secondaries. So it's going to be going through. And once those get to the right length to kind of position them, and then once those get positioned, then we're going to, then we're looking at flowering. So we'll see kind of how fruit set happens. And then once fruit set happens, which usually we have about towards the end of the month, and then when veraison hopefully starts, in like middle of July, then we'll start going through and doing what we need to do there with whether it be leaf pulling or continuing to do shoot thinning and everything to kind of, because what we want to do then, once you talked about rain in July, and it's when it starts getting hot and muggy here. So we need to start protecting ourselves from fungus and different things that are growths that'll start happening on the vines and on the grape clusters themselves. So we need to open up the canopy a little bit in around the grape clusters. And so allowing some of the airflow and allowing for, the flow to kind of come in and mitigate the amount of mildew and things that's going to happen and grow on those clusters.
Great. And then when do you start picking?
Well, for last year was, I think, the first year we started picking for our sparkling in the last week of August. So that was kind of a first, but usually it's in around September 1st, or between September 1st and September 5th is when we start picking for sparkling. And then after that first about week, mid-September, so probably around September 13th or 15th is usually when we start going then full bore and the picking really starts. Our season again is, you probably talked about it, but in New York season, our picking season is very long. So again, it can go from the end of August, and we're picking grapes usually until the first week of November. And this is, so it's a very long season, but it really starts going in mid-September, I would say.
From a given the variability in the climate and how that will affect ripening of different varieties, the fact that we are working with so much gives you a lot of opportunity that, if your Cabernet Franc isn't coming in fully fledged into red wine, you can make a rosé, right? If
sure.
If you're Chardonnay, you can go sparkling. Pinot sparkling, I mean, huge. And so that flexibility, I think, is really important in terms of one, sustainability, I suppose, because you need wine to make and you want that wine to be good. What is the challenge there? I mean, are you making kind of snap decisions during harvest as when to pull things off the vine and is it shit this year we're making extra sparkling, or is it hooray? What's that kind of, give me a little insight into how that decision making process goes.
Yeah, no, for sure. Like a good reference point is talking about 2018 when we had a lot of late season rain, and we went into the year having a plan, of course. Hey, we're going to make this and that. And I schedule out exactly what I'm going to do. I know exactly what's going to happen. I know what I'm going to use here. And then going into probably in about August, we started getting a lot of rain and started walking through the vineyard and started looking at, like, we have Pinot. We have Pinot planted at our home vineyard, and I planned on making a varietal Pinot. And then going through, and we started seeing that, we're having some problems. Pinot is susceptible to rain, so you're looking at it, and it's like, well, we're starting to get some bees and things are starting to attack it because it's getting wet and the skins are starting to break and things are starting to happen. And go through doing the numbers, and I'm like, these numbers are nowhere close to what I need for varietal, so we have to pivot. So it's like, okay, we need to pull all this in. So we decided basically within a day, we need to pick all the Pinot. We're not going to have any of it left over. And I already had plans for making some sparkling, so I'm like, okay, we're going to make a Pinot rosé. Definitely we're going to be doing that. I'll make a still Pinot rosé. Okay, we'll use some of that for that as well. And then we still have another 1.5 tons, 2 tons of Pinot. What am I going to do with it? Like, well, I've never made a Blanc de Noir, so how about we try that this year? So we're like, okay. So ended up pulling the rest of it in, made a Blanc de Noir for that year. It's still in bottle, still in tirage, but that was one of those pivots where we just had to make a last minute decision and say, let's just try this. But that's also what's cool about our region, is because we're not stuck in having to do certain things. We're all kind of not scientists, but we're all kind of dabblers. So we like to play around and try different things, and we have the flexibility of doing so. So if we want to make a Blanc de Noir, why not? Let's give it a shot. Another year I had the same thing with Gamay. I know we'll try the Gamay later, but we have Gamay planted at our home vineyard. Gamay has a tendency to uneven ripen. So we had that year we had Gamay, and a lot of it was unevenly ripened, and it was not coming together where it was going to be fully ripened for the varietal. So make a decision. Okay, how about we just do an early pick all the uneven ripened stuff, and I'll figure out what to do with it. And so we did, and we brought it in, made some of it into a Gamay Rosé, but then the rest of it, I was like, let's make a Blanc out of this. So I made a Gamay Blanc out of all of that. So basically was able to treat it the exact same way it was a Chardonnay, and so made a Gamay Blanc, and actually turned out really nicely. So we were able to kind of pivot last second just to make some quick decisions on things that we knew we weren't going to be able to ripen to full maturity for the typical varietal, but we have different options to play around with. Yeah,
I think you kind of just answered my follow-up question, but my question, and it's meant to be provocative, but is this all worth it? and so is what you end up with in the bottle, is it worth it for you?
Yeah, I think so. I think
Great.
no matter what, going into it, plans always change. I think it's kind of one of the exciting things about it, is that things you can, but it's also exciting. Like some of the best years, it's not making some of the most successful years I've had, and some of the most successful wines I've had, is making something that turned out really good out of something you had no idea what you're going to do with it. So that's actually kind of fun to be able to do those types of things.
Yeah.
So I would say that was like one of the most successful things. Yeah, like the Gamay Blanc that I made the one year, that ended up turning out really, really well. I had no clue, because it's the first time I ever done that, and I was just kind of making the best wine I could out of the grapes that I had, and it turned out really well. So yeah, I was kind of proud of that year. Yeah. So
in my experience, the easy vintages are rarely the vintner's favorite vintages, right? It's the ones you got to work for that I think are the ones that end up being the most special to you. And again, I the only reason I kind of ask, and I frame the question that way, I think that we as the New York industry can fall into the pitfalls of oh, if you could make it here, you could make it anywhere, and it's such a challenge, and I want to remind everyone that the results are worth it, right? We have a special place. We're not just stubborn, right? Yeah. And we're here, and so we're forcing it, right? We're not forcing it. We're going with the flow, right? And the flow yields some really incredible stuff sometimes. And I think that's just kind of more of the vibe I try and put out there when I talk about all these challenges. It's we have special, unique terroir, and yeah, the climate keeps us on our toes and things like that. But man, the wines are awesome. So so thank you for taking us through that snapshot. I really do appreciate it. I'm going to move on to just a bit on history, and then we'll get into our wines here. Lots of history in the Hudson River region. Wine has been produced here for at least the last 3 centuries. For example, in the late 1600s, French Huguenot settlers at New Paltz attempted to grow Vitis vinifera. They failed, but likely due to phylloxera, fungal disease, things like that. But native grapes from Labrusca and Riparia remained the mainstay until varieties like Isabella and things like that were available in the 19th century. And so in the mid 1800s, Hudson Valley horticulturalists and grape breeders played a significant role in the development of new grape varieties and pruning systems. I encourage you to check out both the kind of viticulture section in the reference guide, as well as the Hudson River region section. You're going to learn a little more about these hybridizers and the work that they've done. The proximity to New York City has kept the Hudson Valley quite busy from a viticultural perspective over the centuries, and there's been a lot of success. Very much like the rest of our regions, things were really ramping up leading up until Prohibition. first large commercial vineyard for the Hudson River region, Croton Point Winery, established in 1827, growing Isabella and Catawba grapes. They grew to 75 acres. They were supplying New York City with grapes and produced, wines in the 1860s. Brotherhood Winery was founded in 1839, then known as Blooming Grove Winery, and is the oldest continuously operating winery in the United States because they were able to make sacramental wines for Prohibition, throughout Prohibition. And then we kind of reach our modern industry, as we tend to refer to it. In 1976, they launched the New York Farm Winery Act, and Ben Marl became the first newly licensed New York Farm winery. And they're sitting at one of the oldest continuously farmed vineyards in America, a site that was used since the 1700s. The photo on the previous slide, this one here from the viticultural chat, is taken at Ben Marl. The winery is directly behind me. Beautiful sunset that day, and you could see some very, very new plantings at their home vineyard there. Pretty cool. Ben Marl marks the revival of the region following Prohibition, and the focus has since shifted to premium table wines from smaller producers. The photo there is the signing of the 1976 Farm Winery Act. Be fun to have been a fly on that wall and and seen this group of gentlemen in the room. But yeah, it's just been up and up since then. I mean, in the other kind of noteworthy thing we wanted to shout about is in 2016, the Hudson Valley Cabernet Franc Coalition was formed. Cabernet Franc, a very strong candidate for favorite red grape, not just in the Hudson River region, but across the state. I think it does a really nice job of unifying our three kind of major wine regions, all the way up from Niagara, Finger Lakes, Hudson, down onto Long Island. I think it does incredibly well. And so I think that the group of vintners looking to promote and protect our history with this grape, I think that's super cool. And so, Brad, other than Cabernet Franc, and we talked a little bit about Gamay, what are some of the other important grape varieties in the Hudson Valley? You can speak to kind of your experience with White Cliff. I know that you work with quite a bit. What's working really well?
Well, what works really well for us in particular, we talked about, because we produce quite a variety of different wines, including sparkling. And so, of course, for sparkling, Pinot and Chardonnay is very important for us, as well as now Gamay, which I'm starting to use a little bit in sparkling wine production as well. So those are of particular importance. And some other vineyards in the Hudson Valley are starting to produce sparkling as well. So they're planting more Chardonnay and Pinot. So that's becoming important. Outside of that, I think when it comes to very specific varietals, we have Saval is a major planting in the Hudson Valley. I mean, it's most wineries have Saval involved in their product offerings at some point. So that's definitely a major component of what's planted here. And then those are probably the main ones that are planted. I mean, for us as well, we have other hybrids planted. Like we have Vidal Blanc, which I think is a beautiful grape, and I think it could be planted a lot more. I think it's also very it can be used in a lot of different things. Like we produce a really nice dry Vidal Blanc, which does really well for us. It can be used as a sweet side. I know that there are quite a few dessert style, of course, ice wine. Vidal Blanc is used quite a bit with that. I've had it with sparkling. I think it can be a really nice sparkling grape as well. So I think Vidal Blanc could be one that we're planting more of. And right. I think you could see more of that being planted in the region. Vignole is very important to us as well. It's a main component of one of our main wines that we produce. So that's another grape that does. These are typically the hybrids that can be produced into multiple different types of wines, and it's also great for blending. It can be a little more challenging to grow, so that's probably one of the reasons why more people don't grow it. But it's also one that it makes for a very nice wine. And then outside of that, it can be very vineyard specific of what you want to plant and where you want, what you decide. There are vineyards in the Hudson Valley that have Sangiovese planted. So it can go all over the place. Yeah. But for importance, I think it's really finding one that fits in your winemaking and what you're looking to produce as a product. Vinifera, again, we kind of going back to where we started. Well, what's important for terroir and things in the area? I think it really depends on how close you are to the river, because you need to be close to the river to have vinifera planted. If you don't, you're going to run into a lot of the issues that you're going to have with winter and temperature problems and getting it ripe. But then outside of that, there are so many different offerings of cayuga. Cayuga is also one that is becoming more and more prevalent, being used in a lot of different things. Like some great pet nets are being made out of cayuga, and there's some really fun stuff. So so there are many different options that we have here that we can grow.
Great. Brad, you're killing it with the transitions here, because our first wine is a Seyval Riesling blend, and so we'll get into our tasting now. And I chose this one. I thought this was a really interesting, example of how hybrids and natives can kind of work hand in hand, right? And that's from a viticultural perspective, but then a winemaking perspective as well, where our first two wines, this one and then the rosé, are using Riesling and Cabernet Franc, but not in the way that most other regions in New York State, at least the ones that we've covered so far, are using Riesling and Cabernet Franc. And so this is the Stout Ridge. This is a Seyval Blanc Seyval Riesling blend. It is a 60-40 split. Seyval at 60%, Riesling at 40%. Again, Riesling is the bit player. And this is 100% Hudson Valley grown grapes. We are at 12.5% ABV. No residual sugar in this wine. Vintage 2016, which I thought was really cool. These guys hold on to their wines. And so we get to kind of see a snapshot of these wines later on. And they are very much at Stout Ridge, minimal intervention winemakers. This wine is unfiltered and unfined. So a little cloudy, not nearly as bad as I was expecting. There's definitely some particulate matter floating about, but that never scares me, especially for a wine with this age on it. And so I'm excited to get in there. I'm going to give it a smell, give it a taste. And Brad, if you have anything to add, please do.
Yeah.
Yeah, really clean nose. Nice bright citrus characters. I got some lemon, nice and ripe lemon though. You've got floral notes, white flowers, quite nice. Get just maybe what could be a touch of VA, but it's a good VA. Not it's almost more like a bit kombucha vibes, not nail polish remover. I always try to make that distinction with VA. People hear VA, they get a little tense, but there's two very distinct kinds of VA, and one's really good, and one can be really good, and one is typically never good. And so this one's got just that nice bit of brightness to it. And I think that's how it's coming off.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I really like the texture on that. It's got softness to it, and I think that's definitely from a bit of that vintage age on there, having the wine in bottle for as long as it's been. Acidity is ripping. I'm salivating. Yep. I'm constantly trying to clear my palate of just that extra lubrication, which makes this brilliant for food. I'd be pairing this with shellfish. I'd be pairing this with seafood and cheeses for sure. Really rich cheeses, triple creams, things like that could work incredibly well. I could use this with vinegar-based salad dressings and poultry, things like that could be really nice too. Again, these kind of like pairings.
Yeah.
But also, pretty impressive to kind of really strip back the winemaking as far as they do and get wine of this quality. It's not the kind of most common that you're going to get in New York I think they're really passionate about it,
Mhm.
which is fun. And they wanted to make me be very sure that I knew how to talk about wines like this. They said, they're like, I just want you to know. I'm like, guys, you know, you look at the portfolio that I sell here in the UK, and I'm not afraid to work with natural wine or raw wine. I just think that it's all about your ability to make clean natural wine, right? And I think this is clean. There's nothing off about this wine at all. And so if you could do that consistently, then I'm super proud to support wineries that do their production methods this way. And so yeah,
Sure. I think it also it shows, yeah, I was gonna say it shows what like blending can do for you as well, like having a hybrid blended with some vinifera, because what tends to happen with hybrids is it can be kind of one-dimensional sometimes. So you get something really great from a hybrid, like you'll get like a great front end, or be some either great aromatic or something will be really nice, but then you're missing something throughout the entire, you know, mouthfeel and process. But if you blend in some vinifera to that, this case being Riesling, it just kind of extends the palate. It kind of opens it up a little bit more. It kind of gives it a broader breadth and gives you a little more texture and these things that you're going to get from it that you can get just from blending. I mean, there are different ways to do it with winemaking. So if you're going to minimalist winemaking, doing some blending to kind of create some of that is what you want to do.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Nice journey on the palate. The more I'm kind of getting the finish here, really nice lengthy finish, nice good acidity. It's a lot more orchard fruit than the kind of citrus notes that we were getting on the nose. I think you get a lot of bit of apple skin, but just nice kind of tart green apple vibes, and yeah, real juicy, fun wine. That's great. Let's press on. We're going to move into our rosé. We have beautiful bottle here from Malaya Estate. This is their rosé. This is got 3 grapes in it. This is Seyval Blanc. This is Chambourcin, and this is Cabernet Franc. This is the 2022 vintage. We've got 12% ABV, and I've got some additional notes from the producer that I'm happy to share with you. Blend is primarily, again, Vidal Blanc and Chambourcin. These are heritage grapes. Chambourcin is what brings a lot of the grapefruit and orange peel character. Vidal is bringing in your floral components, and then they blend in some Cabernet Franc in order to give the wine lightness and a linear quality. Basically, he says the heritage grapes, the hybrid grapes can often be a bit too full for the style of rosé that he's trying to create, that he enjoys, and so that Cabernet Franc can come in and really tighten it up for him. And I think that's done a nice job there. The wine is 90% what he says intentional rosé, and so they press the grapes, soak for no more than an hour or two, and then they go to tank. Only about 10% of the blend consists of the Signet from the single vineyard and reserved tier red. So just that kind of very first bleeding off there for a bit of color, which is great. So get in there, give it a smell, give it a taste. Beautiful color on this. Nice, pretty nose. Delicate kind of red berries. Bit of something creamy to it. I see this color. My brain is immediately strawberries and cream kind of scenario. But yeah, it's going to be crisp. I could tell that it's high acid. I could tell that it's dry. And it's juicy. Oh man, nice wine. It really kind of completely fills out your palate. All corners of your mouth have flavor going on. Acidity is ripping, which again, perfect for summer, perfect for lighter fare, cheeses, absolutely, or just sunshine. I mean, this is a pretty easy fun wine that I will be excited to drink this week. Here in London, we've got some pretty good weather, believe it or not. We'll probably top 80 degrees by the weekend, which is pretty good.
Nice. Sweet.
It's great until it hits 110 like it did last summer, and that's less great because they don't know what an air conditioning unit is here.
Exactly.
But that's where cold rosé comes in, right?
For sure. No. Also shows you how nicely that, because one of the challenges with dealing with red hybrids is the acidity levels and getting them to ripeness and acidity levels. but it makes for great for rosé because you can bring it in. It's not doesn't need to be super ripe. Has nice high acids, blend it in with some other things, and it can make a really nice, bright, just easy drinking rosé for the summer for sure.
This just kind of popped into my head, and I'm curious because this reminds me very much of kind of the similar designs that you'll see with Long Island rosés, both in style and packaging, right? I was in London during the pandemic. I wasn't in New York, but everyone kind of spoke of a pretty big migration out of the city, and I know that Hudson Valley brought in a lot of new kind of transplants during that time for folks looking to get out of the city. Is this the New Hamptons up in the Hudson Valley, or I have friends in Beacon, and when I go to Beacon, there's just this adorable American Main Street, and it's on a really gorgeous river, and so are we ticking all the tourism boxes at this point?
Oh yeah, for sure. No, it's major. Yeah, Beacon. I know Beacon. Yeah, I'm in Beacon a lot. So yeah, Beacon's basically, yeah, it's Brooklyn now. It's then you go further up the Hudson, which is where our other vineyard is. That's that's becoming like that's the next spot. So wherever that's, whatever location you want to call that. I mean, Rhinebeck's always been kind of the
big art hub,
Hamptons of the Hudson Valley for so many, like Rhinebeck. You look at Millbrook and those areas over there. That's where famous movie people live, and so tourists are coming up through there all the time. But yeah, the Hudson Valley. I mean, there's been so many transplants that have come up over the years, especially with the pandemic, that it's grown significantly. I mean, we were already getting. We're already an area that has 12 million people driving through it consistently. Now it's grown even more significantly because now you're having a lot of the Jersey people now have also moved up. So it's not even New York City, Long Island, but now you're getting people from Jersey and moving up into the areas. And so it's, our tourism is significant. Yeah, big time.
Gonna hold back the need to make a Jersey joke. I think that's great. I think if it works out well, then all of that influx of people and money will continue to drive sales and growth in the industry, which is going to bring in new equipment and new fruit. And I think that's it's not a bad thing.
No, not at all. No, it makes a challenge because the hardest thing, what we want to do is we want more vineyard planted, but it's really hard.
Land prices,
land. Yeah, it's really hard to find a vineyard being able to be planted. So that's a big challenge. But from a winery standpoint, we're getting more and more traffic to come in. So they're buying more wine and definitely very interested. Like they love coming and seeing the vineyards, and they're all very much in tap with sustainability and those types of things. So we're able to kind of talk to them about that, which is great. So now it's a matter of hopefully being able to identify more vineyard properties, maybe being able to talk some of the orchard guys into planting more grapes instead of just apples, and diversifying a little bit, which has been a big which we've been trying to do over the years. So yeah, that's something we're trying to do here in the Valley.
Yeah, there was a pretty distinct shift, and I'm not quite sure when it happened, but there was a shift from viticulture almost back to orchards at some point when grape value was low. It was maybe like it might have been pre-1970s kind of times, and I think that what's nice is we can almost kind of see it shifting back a little bit. And I think that again, as more people get excited about our Hudson Valley wine region, I think it can go that way.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, you talked about it in the early history. I mean, prior to Prohibition, this was all vineyards.
Yeah.
So Hudson Valley was all vineyards. We shipped all of our grapes down to Baltimore, Philadelphia. So it was like the entire East Coast. They got all their grapes from the Hudson Valley. So, and then, then it changed to apples. Starting to shift a little bit back now because they're trying to diversify. I mean, over the years, because you have places like Washington State and those producing so many apples, and so now there's such a surplus of apples in the market. So they're trying to diversify, and hopefully that's that's going to lead into more grapes being planted.
Yeah. Do you guys ever play with cider at all?
We have, yeah, but not much. I used to do a little bit for one of our local guys here, help him make some. But yeah, no, we don't do as much. I mean, I work with the guys a lot, so we might do some, like I'll have skins. I'll give them some skins for them to use on theirs. We'll do some like co-ferments with different musts. I have some musts for them. They'll do some co-ferments. And so I'm not making the cider myself, but I'm working with them on producing some of their own. Yeah.
I just added to my retail stock a grape apple co-ferment. And it's delicious. And so just another way that we can kind of continue to use what we have, right? Whether that's hybrids, vinifera coming together, could also be apples and grapes. And so I think that, you know, it might not have the same prestige as a full grape wine or a full vinifera wine at that, but you know, this one bottle that I have now is from a very, very highly regarded winemaker that you know, is doing cool stuff. So I think we'll get there. I want to give you some time, Brad, to talk about the Gamay. So I'm going to hand it back over to you.
Yeah, no, for sure. Thanks. Yeah, so Gamay Noir. So we're big proponents of Gamay. We talked about it before. We have 2 different vineyards with Gamay planted. This particular one is our 2020 Gamay. This is from our, we call it our Olana vineyard. So it's our vineyard in Hudson. So it's the vineyard that we have. It's a 10-acre vineyard. I mean, it's planted with, the first planting started happening in 2015. So we planted Gamay, Pinot, and Cab Franc. Well, mostly Gamay and Cabernet Franc. So it's about 3 acres of Gamay that are planted there. So it's on a west-facing vineyard or west slope, right over top the Hudson River. Mm-hmm. So it gets great, you know. So it's the alluvial soils. It's mostly glacial runoff. So we're getting a lot of granite. I mean, you saw some of the boulders we took out when we first planted that place. It was insane. But so we're getting a lot of the, you know, great soil, great drainage. We have very moderating temperatures in that particular location. And so we planted Gamay there because we've been using it. We've had Gamay planted our home vineyard since, I think the first planting they did was in the 80s. So we had it planted there a long time ago. So we know how well it does in the winters here in New York State, or how well it can do in the winters here in New York State. So we went all in on it again up in Hudson. This is from that location. So sorry, it's trying to figure out exactly what to kind of say about this wine.
That's all right. I can tell you that it's very good.
Well, that's a good thing. So vinification wise,
great nose on it. Very you know, varietal typicity there, which is great. Really kind of nice dark cherry, bit of baking spice.
Vinification wise, it's so typically what's happening, everything is handpicked. So we handpick it. I've changed a little bit over the years trying to create. So with trying to maintain and create a little more texture, a little more body to it. Gamay can sometimes be a little on the, people will think of it as like a super light, super, you know, more on the thin side. But so I want to create a little bit more of breadth and a little more body to it. So over the years, I've started to, it's 80% of it's whole berry. So it's destemmed, but then it's fermented whole berry. So you get a little bit of the carbonic maceration that'll happen with just straight whole berry. But then also with this one, I did about 20% of it was lightly crushed. So basically runs through a crusher just enough to break up the skins a little bit. So then hopefully what you're looking to get out of it is a little more color. You're trying to get a little more texture, a little more.
Brad, keep talking. That delivery is here that I told you about.
Okay, cool. So a little more bin palette, a little more structure when you're going through that process. And then it goes through about a 24-hour cold soak. So what I'm doing is I'm soaking it before the fermentation starts. Again, trying to extract a little more tannin, a little more color out of it. And then it goes through fermentation. After fermentation, it's then pressed. I press it into barrel. And then what this goes through, the barrel process for this, Gamay I like what Hungarian oak does with Gamay. So it'll typically go, it went into about 60% goes into Hungarian, no new oak. It was mostly like 2-3-year-old oak. And then the rest of it, the last 40% of it goes into American oak. And those American oak are all neutral oak barrels. So it's not going for a heavy, not going for an oak profile, just going for the oxygenation from the oak to kind of just open it up and allow it to lock in some of the tannin development. So at least has some nice, it's not going to be tannic, but it's going to be hopefully it's more of the smooth tannin that just kind of gives you a little more of the mouthfeel.
Yeah, texture's great. Fruit profile, again, really, really enjoyable. I want to do this with some lamb. You know, there's a really nice kind of spice to it on the finish, a bit of pepper, but it's almost more like Christmassy spices, which I'm really enjoying. And balance, it's not too weighty by any sense. So again, you know, again, great with great food wine for sure. Yeah, I think it's just great. I guess I said earlier, I've been speaking to a lot of folks that would love to plant more Gamay throughout the state, and so I'm glad that you guys did it, and that you're making great wine with it, because hopefully more will follow. I think it's got potential for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, fantastic. Brad, we're just about out of time. I'm going to run through some closing notes here. Again, we touched very briefly on sustainability, but it is as important in the Hudson Valley as it is everywhere else in New York State. And so spend some time with the sustainability program led by the New York Wine and Grape Foundation. Yeah, I hope you can be a part of it. Also, as I run through these closing notes, if anyone does have any final questions for Brad, please don't hesitate to throw them into the chat and I will tackle them quickly. You know, great value proposition for Hudson Valley wine. You know, New York State, New York City, Hudson Valley is all about local. We should be drinking local too. Eating local, drinking local, it really does all kind of come together for local flavor. And so we can boast a wide breadth of styles and varieties with our signature world-class cool climate, fresh and lively wines, moderate alcohol, lots of flavor. Budget friendly to the average consumer, especially when compared to some West Coast counterparts, and overwhelming producers, majority of producers being small and family owned. You're getting an artisan product rooted in unique and fascinating terroir. Hudson Valley has been the crucible for the development of French American hybrids. However, we are seeing increased plantings of both vinifera and improved winemaking technique with our heritage varieties as well. And so serious viticultural wine growing on those varieties developed in the 1800s. This is a nod to our history. It's aligning with the regional culinary trends that focus on local. Sparkling wines, I think, is another kind of area that are going to continue to grow for Hudson Valley. I think it is, again, our history is deeply rooted in sparkling wine, and is particularly within the Hudson Valley region. And so I think we'll continue to see more growth there as well. We've got terroir-driven wines bearing the mark of specific vineyard sites and individual winemakers who understand balance. And lastly, our wines are fantastic with food and the spectrum of style across dozens of grape varieties and production methods. There really is something for everyone to enjoy. So I will leave everyone with that. Brad, thank you again. Couldn't have done this without you. Absolute pleasure. I will look you up on my next visit. I really appreciate it. Any last thoughts?
No, I mean, you pretty much, you nailed it right away. I mean, it's that last picture, that's actually a picture of White Cliffs. So I think that's Kiernan Farm. So it's I believe that's where that is. But yeah, so that's kind of the view you get from our vineyard as well when you come to our place in Gardner, New York. Yeah.
Spectacular.
Yeah, beautiful place.
Brad, thank you so much. Thanks to the New York Wine and Grape Foundation for hosting us once again. We're back next week with Long Island. I will see you all then. Enjoy the rest of the week. Have a great day, guys.
Cool.
Cheers.
Thanks, Dan.